Alright, so I decided I'm just going to go through this whole carburetor again to see if there was any rust that was getting into it, and I'm kind of glad I did, because one of the things I noticed is that these air-fuel mixture screws on the top, these up here, on the US models, these are normally blocked off with a little brass plug to keep you from screwing with them, but you can drill that out and pull them out, so they're out on this one. Now, the manual, there seems to be a lot of confusion about where these should be set. The manual, from what I am reading, these should be about 1 7/8 turns out on the 600cc carburetors, and on the 1200s they're actually 3, which is quite a bit. It seems like baseline is usually around 2. What I found, I've got one out right now, I found that these are all 3 1/2. So I always go by half turn, so I'm going to do this one here and just bring it all the way in. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 7/2, 3 1/2 turns on these. I'm going to set these back to the stock 1 7/8. So I cleaned all these out, and I just figured I'd go through putting together or reassembling all the jets and everything in one of these carburetors. So we're just going to do this one over here, and we'll actually start with this pilot screw over here. One thing I don't have out of it is inside of it. Let me grab this little guy. Alright. What we have on this assembly here, there is a little washer on top of the spring right there. What should be sitting on it is an O-ring. That O-ring's still in here. It's a pain in the ass to get out. I know it's new. If I pull it out with the pick, I'm just going to end up ruining it, and I don't have a spare. So I'm going to leave that O-ring in there. That O-ring will sit on top of this washer. This washer is to keep, a flat surface, and the spring will push on it. So the spring moves freely on here, and then you'll have this mixture screw going in. So I'm going to see if I can get this back in over the O-ring. Okay. And that should go in nicely. So what I'm going to bring it all the way down until it stops screwing in. And then I'm going to back it out 1 7/8 turns. Alright, so we're in. Now we're going to go half, 1, 1 1/2, and then there's 2. I'll back it up just a little bit. So right there. That's a 1 7/8 turns on there. So next we have, for the main needle jet here, you've got a little valve seat, and it's got a tapered end on one side and a flat edge on the other. So you want that tapered end in first. So I'm just going to plop it right in there. And let's see. How close did I get? It should end up sticking through into, let's see, should stick through a little bit. You can see it right there, a little brass piece. Alright, so that's sticking through now. That's where it needs to be. And now the emulsion tube right here, and your main jet is going to stick right on top of that, so it's going to screw in here. So I'm going to put the emulsion tube in first. And I'm pretty sure this is a size 8. Let's see. Yes. Alright, so that's in. And then the main jet is going to go on top of it. So I will set that main jet, and it's got a little screw notch on it, so I can hit it with my screwdriver. Be nice. It doesn't have to. You don't have to over tighten these things. So I'd gone through and blown out all the passages to make sure they're clear before I started this. Now the last piece that we're going to put on is this little guy, and this is your pilot jet. So the pilot jet's going to drop in here, and I'm just going to tighten her down. Okay, so that's in. That's the underside of this. Now I'm missing the floats. I'm going to actually measure up and reset the float heights because I had them too high previously. So the other part of this that's going to happen is that this carb slide will sit on top, and this is that needle that moves up and down depending on the amount of flow that you've got coming in. No, I'm not going to get lucky, am I? I did get lucky. So that needle is then going to be sitting into that seat that we had set previously. So when this moves up and down in the diaphragm, that needle is going to allow more or less fuel to come into it. So I'm not going to go through, I'm going to do all those at one time. I'm going to set the float heights first. No, let's just do the whole top. Actually, I should put these all back together and then set the float heights. So let's just finish this one up. Okay. I need a spring. And then I need a cover. Now, do these have a notch on them? Sometimes these diaphragms have a notch because they need to be oriented in a certain way. This one doesn't, and I think it's just so it doesn't rotate inside of it. This one doesn't have it. So this is just going to go on. There's a little spot right there. I'll skip this part because it's boring. Yeah, so just a quick note here. That actually may explain. Now, when I pulled off one of the spark plugs, I saw, I mean, it was pretty oil covered, pretty dark. Not burnt, but kind of just covered in oily resin. And that's usually indicative of running too rich. If you've got one that looks extremely dry and kind of getting burnt, that's usually too lean. And, well, between those two is just right. So if these were all set too high, that might explain why we were seeing so much stuff on the spark plug. I kind of attributed it to the fact that the entire crankcase was full of gas, and that may still be the reason, but this may also be related. One thing, when these float bowl covers go back on, what you'll see is that actually, if I'm not too stupid to be able to do this, I am too stupid to be able to do this. Alright, so when it sits there, you can actually adjust these fuel mixture screws while the bike is running, and you just get a tiny little screwdriver, and you can usually make about 1/4 inch turns on these things, and it affects how it runs quite a bit. So I expect to have to go back to these. I expect to have to make them a little bit richer because, I mean, I just swung down from 3 1/2 to 1 7/8. So I mean, you're basically at half of it right now. So this may not run right at all. It may have been set to 3 1/2 for the right reasons, but this is all stock. So stock jetting, stock air filter, and everything. So I want to go by the default. So the next thing I'm going to do is set the float heights back to the 17 because they're reading closer to about 18, 18.4 right now. And if you ever want to have a super awesome fun time with the carburetor, go get yourself a V4. That's awesome. Yeah, ask me how much fun that was to get off. Okay, so let's take a look at what we got for the floats. So there's 3 parts here, and we have the floats themselves, this pivot pin, and the needle. So this needle is going to fit inside of this seat. Okay, just like that. And the needle has a little spring-loaded backer on it right there. And when the fluid level inside of here changes, this is going to go up and down and let gas in, or it'll seat. If it's too high, it'll sit back down. When it gets low, it'll come up. So what we're going to do is, let's put this together. We'll put this little guy onto here. And, oh boy. do that to me. Do, 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 do. Okay, let's try this again. Except get it into the hole. Are you too good for your home? Answer me, ball. Okay. Now this pivot pin goes through. It doesn't lock or anything. It gets locked by the bowl that we're going to end up putting back over it. All right, so there is our float. This is going to move up and down. And that needle will open and close. How we adjust this is this little pin here, this tab. Basically, you could push this tab up or down, and that's going to change the height. What makes it a little bit tricky on this thing is those springs are so weak that it doesn't support the weight of this. So you need to check the float level all the way out. So you kind of have to hang this thing. So I'm looking, let's see. I'll get a piece of wood here, and then we'll, there, so like that. I need to put a piece of wood under it and then measure that height right there. And what I'm measuring is from this surface right here to the top of the float. So if I go all the way up, that spring starts compressing. I don't want the spring compression to go into the reading. So from here to here. So I need to get a piece of wood. So I technically have a chemical engineering degree, but that doesn't mean I know how to do math. So I like these digital calipers because it means I don't have to think. So I'm just going to turn it on. And what I'm looking for is the stock is 17 plus or minus 1. I want to be a little on the conservative side. So a higher level is actually going to close the bowl quicker. So let's just see where I'm at on one of these sides. Just touching it. Ooh, I'm high. Oh. 18.97. That's way out of spec. That's very stupid of me because I did that. What does the other side read? Oh, 19.84. I must have read these things differently. That might explain why I wasn't getting any fuel into it when I tried to put gas to it, because a little dab will do you, and this may just not have any fluid in the bowls. I noticed I drained a whole lot less out, so I set them conservative because I was afraid of filling the fuel tank or the crankcase back up. So let's see. So now at this point, what we're going to do, pull the float out. And what we're going to have to do is bend this tab. So, oh God, now I have to think. So if I push it down a little bit, and it doesn't take much. So let's just see how that affected it. I'd like to get to about 17.5 on all these. I think that would be a good place to be. Come on. Okay, how did that change our lives? Let's find out. $17.59, I'm good with that. $17.21. So this one is now much closer to where it should be. It's going to open up more and add more fuel to it. I got to do the other three. It's tough to know exactly where I'm supposed to be measuring this thing, because if I go down a bit, does that affect it? Yeah, but that's pulling the needle out now. So I want to get it just to where, okay, I had it. Just to where that spring is not compressing. So right here, this where, my understanding, this is where I check it. That is what I did, and that is what I will do. Okay, and that's it for the float height adjustment. Last thing to do is to put my bowls back on, and these come with these tiny little screws, these little brass guys, and I like to put a little bit of anti-seize on them because they got these heads. And if you're not using if you're using a Phillips and not a JIS, the JIS is stamped with that little dot. If you're not using a JIS, these things are just going to strip. Even if you are using a JIS, these things are made of cheese, so they're still going to strip. So I like to put a little bit of this anti-seize on. I like to throw my screws around too, but yeah, just a little tiny bit, not enough so that it makes its way into the bowl, but ooh, a little bit much on that one. Okay, so I'm just going to clamp these guys down, and that'll be it, and the carburetor will be reassembled. I kind of played it a little loose and fast with the float height adjustments. From what I'm reading, they're all a little bit over 17 to 17 and a half, and that's kind of where I want to be. Stock is 17, and I was closer to 19 on a bunch of them, so that's why I was starving. So I will get the rest of these put on, and we'll have a reassembled carburetor. God damn it, I'm a fucking idiot. This one goes here. I thought it went over here. I was wrong. You want to see another fun little fuck up? These are all the fuck ups you don't see on the other videos. Or I'm the only one that does it. This thing's really screwing me up. It's got to come back off. God damn it. Okay, there it is. We have a reassembled carburetor. Next step is the tank. Alright, last thing, then this video's done. It's weird that this bike doesn't have an inline fluid filter on it, so I'm considering putting one on. I've got these slick little guys. However, these things never seal right unless you really crank down on them. They're not going to seal right in here. That's probably what I'd want to use. I've also got these really big boys, and so this is going to hook up to the fuel tank right here. So if I want to add one using this existing line, I just want to get this going. And I'm a little afraid because I just derusted the tank, there might be stuff coming through it. I could potentially put this here. I just don't know if there's enough room. So that would go there. I need to cut a little bit of length of hose. This still doesn't make a tight seal, so I'm going to have to use one of these little guys, really crank down on it, or I go without the fuel filter. It's just weird that there isn't one. So that's a decision I'm going to have to make. I wish I could picture how it looks on the bike. If I could fit this thing, at least temporarily, I think that's what I want to do. Just do this. But, man, it's huge. We'll see. Alright, so if the filter's not on here, then this goes and connects right here. If I'm that far back, that might work. I may end up just taking this thing back off when I put it back onto the bike, but I put it on backwards, god damn it. Anyway, it's going to look like this. If I can get this to work, I'm going to run this fuel filter on it. If not, then I have to do it unfiltered.